I've been wanting to do a video on the PIA Flight 8303 crash, but I've been waiting for more information to be released so that we could have a better picture of what went wrong and why a perfectly functioning Airbus A320 would just fall out of the sky. Well, the report is in, and you will not believe what really brought down Flight 8303. That's next on Maximus. Real quick before we start, if you enjoy the content here in the channel, please don't forget to subscribe. And of course, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you can be notified every time we release new content. Thanks for watching. On May 22nd, Flight 8303, a Pakistani International Airlines A320, crashed into a densely populated neighborhood near Karachi in Pakistan. The crash happened after the pilot's first failed attempted landing because they forgot to lower the landing gear, because apparently the pilots were too busy chatting and swapping recipes and failed to hear the audible alarms going off in the cockpit warning them to deploy the landing gear. What's even more shocking is that the control tower failed to notice the A320's gear had not been deployed either. And what makes that even more astonishing is that on the ATC recordings, the cockpit alarms were quite audible to the air traffic controllers. So why were they and the pilots ignoring the alarms? It was only after the airplane's engines were actually scooping out asphalt as they scraped across the runway that the two chatty pilots figured out something was wrong. But hey, terrible landing aside, they were on the ground already, at least they were safe, right? Nope. The pilot hit the throttles and attempted a go-around. However, they never made it back to the airport. The engines were so badly damaged from impacting the runway and ingesting pavement on the first landing attempt that the plane crashed well short of the airport, killing 97 of 99 on board and 2 on the ground. Now, this comedy of cockpit errors would have been funny if it truly wasn't so utterly tragic. So how could such inept pilots be given commercial pilot's licenses in the first place? Well, that's easy, especially if the pilot prints his fake pilot license at the neighborhood Pakistani Kinkos. So now in the wake of this crash comes the shocking news that the Pakistani government released findings of a nationwide investigation where they found that apparently 30% of all Pakistani commercial aviation pilots have fake, yes, fake pilot's licenses. As far as we know, the pilots responsible for the Flight 8303 crash had real licenses. However, evidenced by their flying skills, they sure weren't professionally trained. When this story first broke, I'm sure like many of you, I kept struggling to wrap my brain around how in 2020, even in a third world nation like Pakistan, could a perfectly functioning Airbus just drop out of the sky. Then as news began to trickle out about the aborted landing and the attempted go-around, the speculation was that there must have been a mechanical failure of some kind. But then as the truth slowly began to emerge, that the cause of this crash was actually due to the most spectacular case of pilot stupidity in the history of aviation, that just made it all the more unbelievable. But in this year of pestilence, locusts, and global uprisings, at least when it comes to unbelievable disasters anyway, all bets are off. The Pakistani government's aviation minister announced recently that more than 30% of civilian commercial pilots in Pakistan have fake licenses and are not fully qualified to fly passenger planes. The shocking revelation came as part of the investigation into the crash of a Pakistani International Airlines jet in May. The revelation came alongside a preliminary report announcing the results of the crash investigation. Pilot error was cited. The report states that the two pilots were chatting about the viral pandemic during sensitive parts of the landing procedure and repeatedly ignored audible warnings from inside the cockpit and from air traffic controllers. In June, Aviation Minister Ghulam Khan shared the findings of an international report into May's crash in an address to Parliament, but also referred to a wider government probe which had been launched after a different crash. Following the 2018 crash, it was discovered that the test date on the pilot's license was a public holiday, suggesting that testing could not have taken place on that day. Mr. Khan said investigations had found that more than 200 of the country's 860 active pilots had either fake licenses or had cheated on their exams. A Pakistani International Airlines spokesman confirmed to AFP news agency that the probe found about 100 of its 434 pilots had either bogus or suspicious licenses. We have decided to immediately ground those 150 pilots with bogus licenses, he said. Pakistani's aviation authorities have been probing allegations of PIA pilots' fake qualifications since 2018, but not much is known about it. Since 1965, PIA has suffered 10 major crashes and several minor incidents. Over the years, they have launched some superficial investigations, though they don't seem to have led to any improvements. Many say the Pakistani International Airlines, which once played a major role in the launch of the top Middle Eastern airline, Emirates, has simply succumbed to corruption along with the rest of the country. In recent years, there have been frequent allegations of drug trafficking and smuggling involving PIA staffers, but in most cases there haven't been visible reprisals. PIA acknowledges that fake licenses is not just a PIA issue, but spread across the entire Pakistani airline industry. Mr. Khan told Parliament that the pilot and air traffic control failed to follow protocol. He said there was nothing wrong with the Airbus A320 aircraft, which had taken off from Lahore and was attempting to land in Karachi. Khan added that the pilots were instructed several times by air traffic controllers to abort their landing attempt because the plane was too high, but the captain didn't pay attention to the instructions. The pilots proceeded with the attempted landing, but for some inexplicable reason, they failed to lower the landing gear. Even more astounding, the control tower failed to notice the landing gear wasn't lowered either. According to the report, the aircraft touched the runway surfaces on its engines, the report said, causing sparks and damage. The pilots tried to climb back into the air, but the damaged engines failed quickly.
While proceeding that, sir, we have lost engines. Sir, Mayday, Pakistan 830.
Causing the jet to plummet into a Karachi neighborhood, exploding on impact, killing all but 2 on board, as well as 2 more on the ground, with many others injured. Both Pakistan International Airlines and Pakistan's larger airline industry have had a dangerous safety record over the years, with several incidents including another fatal crash within the past decade. This is one of those stories that if you wrote the script for a movie, you'd never be able to sell it because it's so unbelievable. What do you think? That's it for me. Let me know down below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and ring the bell. And remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.